So very quickly, GeotagX is a project of UNISAT, which is the Operational Satellite Applications Program of UNITA. UNISAT has two main areas of work, which I'll focus on one for today, which is what we call rapid mapping, where we provide satellite imagery analysis for humanitarian response in crises like natural disasters and conflict. So most of UNISAT's work is based around satellite imagery analysis, but there's a few limitations to do with satellite imagery. One of the main ones being that we're only looking at things from above. So if we were doing a damage assessment, we would not see the damage in this building at the top here. Another one is that sometimes it's quite difficult to extract clear data from the satellite imagery. So if we look at this map at the bottom, this is the Thailand flooding in 2011. This empty circle, I'm not sure if you can see it from there, is actually Bangkok, which was severely impacted by the floods, but we can't extract anything on that because there's a confusion in the satellite signature between heavily or densely populated urban areas and water, so we just couldn't get anything out of that area. Thirdly, there's also the weather. So a lot of satellite sensors are just blocked by clouds. These are flooding in, I think it's Cambodia. Which you can't really see anything there. There is actually water underneath, but the clouds block it. And finally, we just can't see what's going on the ground. We can't see who's there. We can't see what conditions they're living in. So what we wanted to do was find a way of filling in some of these gaps that we get in the satellite imagery and also verifying the analysis that we get from the satellite imagery that we do at UNISAT. So this is where GeotagX comes in. Initially, the idea was just to collect photos and use them to verify what we were seeing. But then we started thinking that maybe we could actually get a lot more information out of these than just the photos themselves. And so this is based on the idea that an expert, someone with skills that maybe you or I don't have, can look at this photo here and tell us a bit more about maybe the environmental conditions of that area. Is it under drought? Is there water stress? Maybe a bit about the people themselves. Where are they from? What are they doing? And so what we want to do is we want to try and share that knowledge with the crowd so that they can pass all the photos that are coming out of a disaster, extract large data sets, and produce something that could be useful to the humanitarian response. So the aims of GeotagX is just to harvest photos coming out of a disaster using a variety of means, and then to analyse them and produce structured and relevant data sets showing what is happening on the ground. So quickly, what is a disaster for GeotagX? We look at both fast-moving emergencies, so sudden onset events like flooding, earthquakes. We also look at more slow-moving events, so drought, pollution, climate change. This sort of comes out of the fact that because we're only working with volunteers, we had to be really flexible in the types of events that we could address because we're entirely dependent on the experts that were happy to work with us. So where do we get the media for GeotagX? So smartphones are becoming more and more available these days. A large part of the population now has a tool in their back pocket that can take geotagged photos and can load them onto the internet. Lots of organisations are facilitating this by developing applications that can do just that. So Picasa, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, Facebook. UNISAT ourselves, we have developed an application specifically for collecting geotagged photos in disaster situations called UN Assign. And then there's a whole lot of other data collection applications available out there as well. So in disaster situations, if you want to see how this is being used in Haiti, during the earthquake, a lot of the first information that came out of that event was actually being posted by the local population on social media like Twitter, Flickr, YouTube. If you want to look at the Syrian crisis, there's thousands and thousands of photos coming out of that. So if we look at this is just one album on Panoramio, which has 900 photos only showing damaged buildings, of which more than 300 are geotagged. And then more recently in Nepal, we had people in the field using UN Assign and sending in hundreds of photos to us. And so what we want to try and do is get something out of those photos, but it's so resource intensive for instance, me to sit down and do that work that we just can't do it, so we need to turn to the crowd. So to do this, we've developed a workflow and a set of tools that facilitate this process, which I'm going to explain to you now. But throughout the whole process, we're working with volunteers. So I'll start with our expert volunteers. These are those people I was talking about before who could look at a photo and maybe see something that you or I wouldn't notice immediately. So what we want to do is we want to work with them to transfer their knowledge to the crowd. So to do this, we develop a series of questions which are translated into projects, so photo analyses on the platform that we have. So the platform, if I look more at the tools we've developed, we have the GeotagX platform itself, which is based on PyBossa, which is an open source framework for crowdsourcing projects. And we've also built a series of tools for collecting photos from different sources. So our first step is to collect photos. To do this, we have tools that can ingest photos from Flickr, from Twitter. We have a plugin that works with Chrome and Firefox so that as people browse the internet, they can send us photos that they think are relevant to a particular event. We also have links with UNAssign and EpiCollect, which is another data collection application, so that people can, in the field, they can send photos directly into GeotagX. So this is the platform. I was going to give you a demo. I'm not sure. Maybe I could. Can I do a demo quickly? Or yeah, sure. So this platform is being developed in an iterative way, taking into account feedback from users, from our volunteers, from usability studies that were done as part of the CyberLab project. It's quite slow today. I do have screenshots if this doesn't work. And so it's changed quite a lot over the period of the project. I'm just going to go with the screenshots because this doesn't seem to be working. So this is what it looks like. Once the photos are collected, they're pushed into this platform and organised into categories, which you can see our current categories that we're working with at the moment on the bottom. These are events. So here we have Somali drought, we have emergency shelter assessment in the Middle East, and they're projects we're working on with often other organisations, but majority or all of them on a voluntary basis. So people have approached us and they had an idea, and we help them implement it. So if we take the emergency shelter in the Middle East, here we have two projects in there, a geotagging application, geotagging project, so the photos, we ask people to geotag the photos as best as they can. And then we have a topic-specific application, which in this case is Are Shelters Prepared for Winter? So what you would do, you would click on the project that you're interested in, and then in there you get all the information you need on that project and you can start. So one of the more interesting things here when we're talking about trying to transfer the knowledge from our experts to our crowd is we've worked really hard on developing tutorials that keep people engaged, that people pay attention to, and that hopefully they learn something from. So in here you can read about the project if you like. What we've also tried to do is we want to try and give users feedback on how well they're doing. In this case, it's a bit difficult because we don't want to tell people the answers before the photos are finished because then that can bias the answers that they give us. So what we do is we give a summary of the results once the photo's been finished, once we've had enough people looking at it and we're not showing it anymore. So if you looked in tasks, you'd see a list of photos and you'd be able to see the answers that other people have given, so you can see how well maybe you're doing compared to other people. Then there's the tutorial stats and also a blog. And then you'd want to click on Start Contributing. If you haven't already done the tutorial, then it'll get you to do the tutorial. And again, these are developed with our experts. So we take the photo, we get a set of right answers, and then we build this. And if you need some help, you click on help, you get a detailed explanation of what you're looking at with examples of what you should be looking for. And then we have the questions, which in this case we have 3 questions. These, we're working with an NGO called the REACH Initiative. They do needs assessments in humanitarian crises in a variety of disasters, all different types, all over the world. In this case, we're looking at refugee camps in Iraq and Jordan. And these questions came directly out of their shelter assessment questionnaires, which feed into indicators on how well prepared the shelters are for winter. So it's directly linked to the field surveys and the work that they're doing on the ground, which is really important if we want to make the data relevant. So that's getting into this. How do we, once we have all this data, once the volunteers have got on there, they've clicked through everything, and we have all of these photos processed, what do we do with it? How do we make sure it's relevant? So the main thing is to link it very closely with what the organisations working in the field are doing. That's what we're doing with REACH. We're working with them. They give us their questionnaires, or they give us questions that they've adapted from their questionnaires, and then we build the applications according to what they need. And that means that we can get, so that means that we end up with relevant structured data sets. What the most important thing with this is that when you're working in a disaster crisis, it's extremely chaotic in those first few weeks after it hits. And what you want to do is try and get as much information from as many sources as possible so that you can get as good an overall picture as you can. And so the idea behind this is not to replace any other data sources, it's to complement what people are already doing. So we have the satellite imagery analysis, which has its limitations. We have the field surveys, which give a very good, complete picture of what's happening, but they also have their limitations. With this data set, we want to give them another type of data which they can use to complement what they're doing and get a better picture. So what is also important is that it's actually available to the humanitarian organisations. So we have to make sure that it's in a format that's accessible to them. So we have it in CSV, JSON and GeoJSON, and that it's available via APIs, download links, so that anyone can ingest it into their systems quickly and easily. And we share it on the Humanitarian Data Exchange, which is where a lot of the humanitarian organisations go for their data when they need it. So there's a few questions, which is what we've been trying to answer over this project. How much data can we even get out of the photos? Maybe we just can't get the data that the humanitarian organisations need out of a photo. Maybe you just can't see it. How much photos are out there? How quickly do they appear after a disaster? What we found is that photos appearing on the internet are often of the same area, of the same thing. So if you think of Nepal, everyone was taking photos of the centre of Kathmandu, but that wasn't the only area impacted, which causes a massive bias in the data coming out. So what we're starting to do is look more at links with field collection devices like UN Assign. Then who can be involved, who wants to be involved? Who can be an expert? Like I said, we have to be really flexible because you never know who's going to be involved, how much time they have, which really guides what we're doing. And then in that case, can we transfer their knowledge from them to the crowd? What can we get the crowd to do? How do we do that? Can the crowd produce reliable and accurate results, or is it just they're doing lots of work, but actually what they're coming up with is no use or not reliable? And then finally, what events can be addressed with this tool? Maybe in a sudden onset disaster, it doesn't work because we can't set things up quickly enough, or the crowd doesn't get into it quickly enough. So that's some of the things we've been trying to look at. So, and that's pretty much it. If you have any questions.